I want to tell you a story I never imagined I would share with anyone. It is a story about a sickness, a marriage, a secret, and a moment that changed the way I saw my own child. And it is a story about the day I learned something about my son that broke my heart so deeply that I still feel it every time the house gets quiet. That day started like many others. I was standing at the kitchen sink, washing the same old ceramic cups I'd had for years and listening to the sound of soft rain tapping against the window. It was one of those dull gray mornings where the sky feels heavy and the world feels slow. I remember thinking how the quiet felt comforting. Little did I know that the quiet would soon follow me into a truth I wasn't ready to face. If I had known then what I know now, if I had known what my son was doing while his wife was fighting for her life, I would have held that cup tighter. Maybe I would have let myself cry right there by the kitchen window. But life doesn't warn you. It unfolds quietly, like pages in a book you aren't ready to finish. My daughter-in-law's illness had been a long journey, a slow, painful one. Some days were hopeful, some days were dark. But through it all, I believed, truly believed, that my son was doing his best. A husband staying strong for his wife, a man carrying a heavy burden, a son I raised with as much love as I knew how to give. I held on to that belief for a long time, because holding on to it felt easier than questioning it. But the truth doesn't care about comfort. It arrives when it wants to, and it sits on your chest until you finally look at it. The day I learned the truth, I felt something crack inside me. Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft, painful break, like the sound of a small branch snapping under the weight of something unexpected. And I have carried that feeling ever since. Before I tell you what happened, before I take you into the moment when my son's choices came crashing into my world, I want to go back. Back to when things were calmer. Back to when we still had laughter at the dinner table and hope felt like something we could touch. Because stories like this, they don't start with the pain. They start with love. And ours did too. My son, Daniel, wasn't an easy child to raise, but he had a softness in him that made people trust him. He was always the boy who would help an elderly neighbor carry groceries or sit with someone who looked lonely at school. He wasn't perfect, but he had a good heart. At least, that's what I always believed. His wife, Maya, came into our lives when he was 24. I still remember the first time I met her. Daniel brought her home for a Sunday lunch. She walked into my kitchen, smiling shyly, holding a small plant in a ceramic pot, saying, "I didn't know what to bring, so I brought something that grows." I liked her instantly. She had warm eyes, quiet eyes, the kind that made you feel seen without being judged. And Daniel looked at her the way a man looks at something rare, something precious. Their marriage was simple. Not perfect, but gentle. They worked hard, lived modestly, and shared a tenderness that felt genuine. When Maya got sick, everything changed. It started with small signs: fatigue, weight loss, little things we brushed aside. But soon the truth unfolded, and the word we feared most settled into our family like a cold, unwanted guest: cancer. Even saying it now, I feel my chest tighten. Maya handled it with grace I still don't understand. She smiled through pain. She thanked the nurses even when she couldn't lift her head. She apologized for being a burden, even though we told her she never was. Daniel, at first, was strong. He held her hand during treatments. He slept on uncomfortable hospital chairs. He cooked her meals she could barely swallow. I watched him and thought, this is the kind of man I raised. This is the son I know. But people have limits. Not always visible ones, not always spoken. Sometimes those limits show themselves in quiet betrayals, sometimes in choices made in the dark, sometimes in the belief that escape might feel easier than endurance. I didn't know Daniel was struggling. Not really. He didn't talk to me about his fears. He didn't cry in my arms. He didn't admit how heavy the responsibility felt. If he had, maybe the story would be different. But he kept everything inside, and the things people keep inside eventually find their way out. During the first year of her illness, I visited their home often, not to intrude, but to help, cooking meals, folding laundry, sitting with Maya when she felt lonely. She would talk about her childhood, about her dreams, about how she wished she could see the ocean one more time. I would hold her hand and tell her she still had time. I believed that, or maybe I just needed to. One afternoon, while I sat beside her, she whispered, "He thinks I don't see it, but I do." I asked her gently, "See what, dear?" She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He thinks I'm tired of being sick." My heart cracked a little that day, not because I believed her, but because I didn't want to. I took her hand and said the only thing I could. "He loves you, Maya. He's overwhelmed. Anyone would be." She nodded, but the sadness didn't leave her eyes. I carried that look with me for months. It wasn't until much later that I realized she had been trying to tell me something deeper, something she sensed long before I did. One evening, Daniel came home later than usual. He said he had work. He said he was tired. He said he didn't want to talk. I believed him because mothers often believe what they want to believe. But Maya watched him walk down the hall, and something in her face changed. Not anger, not fear, just a quiet, aching understanding. She whispered, "He smells different." I didn't know what she meant then, but those words would echo in my mind months later when the truth finally reached me. Daniel had always been the kind of man who liked to fix problems, but you can't fix cancer. You can only walk beside it, and sometimes the people walking beside it get lost. I wish I had seen the signs sooner. The nights he didn't answer his phone, the times he said he needed fresh air, the excuses about work that didn't add up. But I didn't see them. Or maybe I refused to. Sometimes love makes us blind, and sometimes it makes us look away on purpose. This was the beginning. This was when small cracks started forming in the walls of our family. Cracks I didn't yet understand. Cracks I couldn't see. But the truth was already moving towards us, softly at first, then faster, then all at once. And when it arrived, it didn't just break a marriage. It broke a bond I thought could never be shaken. A bond between a mother and her son. I want to take you back to a time when I still believed everything would work out. A time when I thought strength meant pretending everything was fine, even when it wasn't. Looking back now, I understand how wrong I was. Silence doesn't solve pain. Silence only lets it grow. After that quiet moment when Maya whispered, "He smells different," I didn't let myself think too much about it. I brushed it off as the confusion of illness, the heightened senses that come from fear, or maybe even a little misunderstanding between a husband and wife under pressure. People say intuition gets stronger when life becomes fragile. I wish I had remembered that then. Because Maya wasn't confused. She wasn't imagining things. She was quietly watching her husband slip away from her, even while she was clinging to life. But at that time, all I saw was my son trying to cope, and my daughter-in-law trying to survive. I spent more time at their home in those days, not to interfere, but because the silence felt too heavy for Maya to face alone. She would sit on the couch near the window, wrapped in a thin blanket, even during warm weather. Her body had become so small, her voice so soft. Sometimes I had to lean close just to hear her. I would bring soup in small bowls, hoping she'd take a few sips. Most days she tried. Some days she just shook her head and whispered, "Maybe later." One afternoon, as I tucked the blanket around her feet, she asked, "Do you think Daniel still sees me the same way he used to?" Her eyes were searching mine, desperate for reassurance. I smiled gently and said, "Of course he does. Illness doesn't take away love." She nodded, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Looking back now, I see that she already knew the truth. She was hoping I would deny it for her. She needed someone to tell her she wasn't losing him. But she was, and I didn't see it. Daniel grew more distant as the months passed. It was small things at first. He would come home 20 minutes later than he said he would, then an hour later, then sometimes not at all until morning, saying he had fallen asleep at the office. I asked him once, very gently, "Are you coping, son?" He didn't look at me. He just shrugged and said, "I'm fine, Mom. I'm tired, that's all." I didn't push him. I should have. He was slipping through cracks he didn't know how to climb out of, and I, his mother, didn't reach for him. Maya saw more than I did. She saw the broken moments, the moments he didn't think anyone noticed, the way he sighed before entering the bedroom, the way he sat on the couch staring at nothing, the way he checked his phone more often than he held her hand. She saw everything. Patients notice. They always do. One evening, Daniel asked me if I could stay the night with Maya. He said he needed to clear his mind and drive around for a bit. I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe he needed fresh air, a moment alone, a quiet drive to ease the weight pressing on him. Caring for someone you love in pain can feel like drowning sometimes. I wanted to give him grace. I agreed, of course. Maya smiled weakly when I told her. She said, "He deserves a little break." Her voice trembled when she said it, but she tried to hide it. I wish I had listened to that tremble. It was late that night, maybe close to midnight, when Maya asked me, "Do you think he's really driving alone?" Her eyes were glassy, reflecting the faint lamplight in the room. The rain was tapping softly against the window, and the whole house felt like it was holding its breath. I didn't know what to say. I thought honesty meant comforting her, so I simply said, "Yes, dear, he just needs space to think." She turned her head away. I saw her wipe a tear. Illness doesn't just hurt the body. It hurts the heart in ways we don't always see. Over the next few months, Daniel's absences grew more frequent. Work ran late. I'm helping a friend. I just need a few hours. Always a reason, always a soft excuse spoken with tired eyes. Maya never complained, never accused him of anything. She simply shrank into herself, as if she was trying to take up less space in his life. Her visits to the hospital grew more frequent. Her strength grew weaker. Her breaths shorter. And Daniel grew farther away. Sometimes he didn't even notice she had fallen asleep crying. Sometimes he didn't notice she waited hours just to hear his footsteps at the door. But mothers notice things others ignore. I saw the guilt in his face when he looked at her. I saw the fear, and I saw the escape he kept choosing. Escape is a comfortable lie. Responsibility is a painful truth. He chose the lie. I remember one particular day that still sits heavy in my chest. It was early afternoon. The sky was bright and clear. Birds were singing outside, and a gentle breeze moved through the curtains. It should have been a peaceful day. Maya was resting in bed. Daniel was in the kitchen, looking exhausted and irritated. He slammed a cupboard door harder than he meant to, and I walked in quietly. "Daniel," I said softly, "talk to me. What's going on?" He rubbed his face with both hands and sighed. "Mom, I'm tired. I can't do this anymore." My heart tightened. "You're not doing it alone," I reminded him gently. He shook his head. "That's not what I mean. I feel trapped, Mom." I often think about the weeks that followed that message. the one I saw by accident. Those weeks felt like walking through fog. I moved, I cooked, I cared for Maya, I checked on Daniel, but my mind was somewhere else, trapped between denial and a truth I didn't want to fully accept. I didn't confront him, not then. I wasn't ready. I wasn't strong enough. I kept telling myself, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it meant something innocent. Maybe the girls were just friends or coworkers. But a mother knows when her excuses are lies. And no matter how hard I tried to bury it, something inside me was changing. The trust I had in my son, the belief that he was a good man doing his best, it began to shake. Not break, not crumble, just tremble. Sometimes the trembling of a truth hurts more than the truth itself. During those weeks, Maya became more fragile. Her world became smaller, reduced to the bedroom, the bathroom, the living room couch, and the path between them. She fought hard, harder than I've ever seen anyone fight, but her strength was fading. The doctor said her condition was progressing, a word that sounded so hopeful when used in other situations, but here it meant the opposite. She knew, I knew, Daniel knew, though he pretended not to. I think that's why he stayed out so much. Facing her illness meant facing the truth he didn't want to accept, that he was losing her, and that he was failing her. People often run from pain. Some run into anger, some into isolation. My son ran into the company of strangers, and one particular stranger he hadn't introduced to anyone. But I didn't know that part yet. Not fully. One evening, after a long hospital appointment, Maya whispered to me in the car, "I don't think Daniel wants to be here anymore." I felt a sting in my chest. "Of course he does," I said gently. "He's overwhelmed, that's all." She shook her head slowly. "It's more than that. I can feel it." I reached over and held her hand. Her fingers were cold and thin. "What makes you think that, sweetheart?" She took a breath. "I smell perfume on him, not mine. I see messages he hides. I see the way he pulls away when I touch him." Tears gathered in her eyes, but didn't fall. "I'm dying, and I'm losing him at the same time." I didn't know what to say. The silence sat between us like a third passenger. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to give her comfort she could hold on to, but I also couldn't lie to her. Not anymore. So I just squeezed her hand and whispered, "You're not losing everyone. I'm here." She nodded, but I could see the loneliness swallowing her from the inside. During those days, I tried to talk to Daniel in small ways, soft beginnings to gentle conversations. "Daniel, Maya seems worried about you." "Daniel, she needs you more now." "Daniel, you're gone a lot. Is everything all right?" He brushed me off every time. "Mom, I'm fine. Mom, stop worrying. Mom, I told you, work is a mess. Mom, please don't start with this." And every time his voice grew colder, more distant, more defensive. I knew something was wrong. He knew something was wrong, but neither of us had the courage to speak the truth. Not yet. There was a night I'll never forget, a night when everything felt like it was tipping. Maya had fallen asleep earlier, but around midnight she woke up crying. She tried to hide it, covering her face with her hands, but I heard her. I sat beside her on the bed. "Maya, sweetheart, what's wrong?" She wiped her cheeks and whispered, "I don't think he didn't come home again." I looked at the empty side of the bed. His pillow was cold, untouched. "I called him," she continued. "He didn't answer." A moment passed before she added, almost choking on the words, "I don't want to die feeling unwanted." My heart broke open, right there in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, right there beside a young woman who didn't deserve this kind of pain. I wrapped my arms around her carefully. She was so frail, I was afraid to squeeze too hard. "You are not unwanted," I told her. "You are loved. You are valued. You matter." She nodded into my shoulder, but I could feel her trembling. No one should tremble like that, not on their way out of life. The next morning, Daniel came home. He smelled of cologne, not one I recognized. His hair was slightly messy, and he looked guilty before anyone said a word. I was in the kitchen. Maya was in the bedroom. He walked in quietly, but he didn't know I was watching him. He took a deep breath, leaned against the refrigerator, and whispered to himself, "I can't keep doing this." It wasn't the words alone that hurt. It was the tone, a tone of resignation, not grief. I stepped into the room. "Daniel?" He jumped slightly. "Mom? Hey, I didn't see you." His eyes were tired, but there was something else in them, something closed off. "Where were you?" I asked softly. "Work," he said quickly, too quickly. I didn't push. He wouldn't have admitted anything anyway, but the kitchen felt different after that. Tense, tight. I watched him walk into the bedroom. I remember standing in the kitchen that evening, staring at the empty sink, even though I had washed the dishes an hour earlier. My hands were still wet because I kept rinsing them, pretending I had more to do. The truth was, I just didn't want to go back to the living room, because she was there. And being near her felt like walking into cold air after stepping out of a warm shower. Sharp, sudden, uninviting. She wasn't always like that with me, but lately it felt as if she wanted me gone without ever actually saying the words out loud. I could hear the faint sound of the TV playing in the other room, but it wasn't comforting. It used to be. It used to mean family, time together, simple evenings where silence wasn't heavy and tense. Now it reminded me of all the moments I no longer felt welcome. I wiped my hands on the towel slowly, buying myself more time. But eventually, I walked back into the living room. She didn't look at me, not even a glance. I sat down quietly, leaving a small space between us on the couch. I wanted to ask her if she was okay. I wanted to ask if I'd done something wrong, but her body language, it told me she didn't want a conversation. So I stayed quiet. For a few minutes, the only sound was the TV and the soft ticking of the old wall clock that had been there longer than I had been alive. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm, but not warm. "Did you ever think," she said without looking at me, "that maybe some things aren't working because you keep forcing them?" I didn't know what she meant at first, or maybe I did but wasn't ready to accept it. So I asked softly, "Are you talking about us?" She shrugged. "I'm talking about everything." I felt her words settle somewhere deep inside me, somewhere tender. I waited for her to explain, but she didn't. She never did. She always said just enough to hurt and nothing more. I took a breath, steadying myself. "I don't want to force anything," I said. "I never have." She exhaled through her nose, still not looking at me. "Then maybe it's time you let some things go." My heart dropped, because she wasn't talking about a habit or a job or a small issue between us. She was talking about me, about us, about everything we had tried to build. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't confused or emotional or overwhelmed. She was done, and I was the only one who hadn't caught up yet. I looked at her, hoping she would give me something, anything to hold on to, but she didn't turn her head. She didn't want to fight. She didn't want a conversation. She didn't want a solution. She just wanted distance. She wanted space. She wanted me gone. And that truth hurt more than any argument we could have had. So that night, I didn't say much. I just nodded slowly, stood up, and walked to our room. Every step felt heavier than the last. I packed only a few things, enough to get by for a few days, because I was still holding on to a small, fragile hope that maybe she didn't really mean it. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she needed time. Maybe something would change. But deep down, in the quiet part of my heart, I already knew the truth. When someone stops caring, they don't always slam doors. Sometimes they just stop opening them. And she had closed hers long before I realized it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the edge of the mattress facing the wall, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan. My bag sat on the floor beside the bed, half open, half packed, almost like it was waiting for me to make a decision. She didn't come into the room. She stayed on the couch. I could hear when the TV stopped playing. I could hear her footsteps as she walked to the bathroom. I could hear the tap run for a moment, then shut off. But I never heard her come near me, not even once. And that silence hurt more than shouting ever could. Because silence doesn't happen by accident. Silence is chosen. By morning, the apartment felt colder. Maybe it was the weather, or maybe it was the emptiness that was slowly spreading between us. I walked into the kitchen to make coffee, more out of habit than need. My hand shook a little as I held the mug, even though I tried to steady myself. I heard her footsteps behind me. For a second, my heart lifted in my chest. I thought maybe she would say something, anything, that would make me stay, or at least make me feel like she still cared. But she only said, "Are you leaving now?" Not, "Please don't go," not, "Let's talk," just a question, a practical one. I nodded. Yeah, for a few days. She didn't respond, but I saw the tiny flicker of relief cross her face. She tried to hide it, but I knew her well enough to notice the small details. And that tiny flicker broke something inside me. I looked at her carefully. The girl I once loved so deeply, the girl I fought for, the girl I dreamed of building a future with. She was right in front of me, but she felt miles away, like someone I barely knew anymore. I grabbed my bag from the bedroom. She watched quietly. No tears, no emotion, no hesitation. So I asked the question I had been afraid to ask. "Do you want me to come back?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. That was the first answer. But then she whispered, barely audible, "I don't know." That was the second answer. The real one. I took a slow breath. My chest felt tight, like the air didn't want to come in. "I'll text you," I said, even though I wasn't sure she wanted that either. She nodded, still looking anywhere except at me. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped outside. The hallway felt too bright, too quiet, too empty. I stood there for a moment, holding the doorknob, waiting, just waiting to hear her call my name. But she didn't. She closed the distance between us. I remember the morning everything changed. It was quiet. Too quiet. The house felt colder than usual, even though the sun was already touching the curtains. I woke up before everyone else, as I often did. I made tea for myself, and for a long minute, I stood there, holding the warm cup with both hands. I felt something in my chest, a heaviness, a kind of fear that didn't have a name yet. I didn't know that this would be the day my heart would break in a way I never expected. Not because of death, not because of sickness, but because of truth. A truth I never asked for, a truth I wasn't prepared to hear. My daughter-in-law, Lynn, had gotten worse in the last few weeks. She was so thin, so tired. Even smiling cost her strength. I tried not to cry in front of her. I wanted her to feel safe, not pitied. So I smiled, even when my heart trembled. That morning, she was still asleep, her breathing shallow and slow. I sat by her bedroom door and listened. Sometimes I whispered small prayers. Sometimes I just stayed silent, because silence felt softer than words. After a while, I went downstairs to check if my son had eaten. He had lost weight too, but he didn't notice. He didn't notice much anymore. His eyes were always somewhere far away, inside a memory, inside a worry, inside a fear he did not know how to share. I prepared a simple bowl of rice porridge for him. When he finally came down, he looked tired and restless. "Did you sleep?" I asked softly. He shook his head. "Not really." I pushed the bowl toward him. "Eat a little, just a little." He sat, but he didn't touch the spoon. His hands were shaking. At first, I thought it was lack of sleep, or stress, or fear of losing Lynn, and in a way it was all of that. But it was something else too, something I didn't understand yet. Around mid-morning, the nurse came to help with Lynn. The routine was familiar, almost like a quiet ritual we all performed to keep our hearts steady. I usually stayed with her during the nurse's visit, but that day, my son came to me and said, "Mom, can you give me a moment?" His voice was strange, flat, a little too calm, like someone who practiced sounding calm. I nodded. Of course. We went to the small balcony outside the kitchen. The sunlight felt warm on my shoulders, but my son's face looked pale. He kept staring at the floor, then at the sky, then back at the floor again. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't reply right away. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again as if searching for a safe place to put his words. Finally, he whispered, "Mom, I have to tell you something, but you have to let me finish before you say anything." Something inside me tightened, but I stayed still. "Go on," I said. He took a deep breath, and for a moment I saw his lower lip tremble. My son, who always tried to look strong in front of me. My son who rarely showed fear. My son who had been breaking quietly while pretending he wasn't. He finally spoke. "I did something. Something I'm not proud of, and I did it while Ling was sick." My heart stopped for a second. He didn't look at me when he continued. "I wasn't always there for her. Not the way she needed. Not the way a husband should be." The wind suddenly felt colder. My hands felt cold too. He swallowed. "I wasn't faithful." I breath caught. I did not expect that. I did not want to hear that. Not now. Not ever. But he kept talking because he had to. "It happened months ago, when the doctors first gave us the timeline. I broke. I panicked. I fell apart. And I made the worst mistake a man can make." I felt something in me crack. Not loudly. More like a soft, painful tear. I whispered, "Your wife is upstairs fighting for her life." "I know," he choked out. "I know, Mom. I know. I regret it every second. I wish I could take it back. I wish I could erase it." His breath broke completely then. He covered his face with his hands like a little boy who was ashamed of doing something terrible. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, feeling every part of my chest freeze. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to ask how he could do this to a woman who loved him more than she loved herself. But I didn't. Because the moment I looked at him, really looked at him, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. He was drowning. Not slowly, not painfully, but fully, completely, like a man who had been underwater for too long and no longer remembered what breathing felt like. After a long silence, he said something that broke me all over again. "She knows." I felt the world tilt a little. She knows?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. He nodded slowly. His eyes were red. "I told her. I couldn't keep it from her. She cried, not because of what I did, but because she said she didn't want to leave this world with anger in her heart." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. He continued, voice shaking. "In the months that followed, life didn't return to what it was before. It didn't try to. It simply reshaped itself around the empty spaces Leon left behind. Some days I would pass her favorite cup on the kitchen shelf and feel a small ache in my chest. Other days I would see the way the morning light fell across the floor and remember how she used to pause, just to appreciate little things. Grief doesn't vanish. It settles. It softens. It becomes a quiet companion that walks beside us instead of standing in front of us. And in that soft distance, healing finally found us. My granddaughter learned to say her mother's name without crying. She carried a small photo everywhere, holding it close like a treasure. One afternoon, she climbed onto my son's lap and pointed at the picture again. "Daddy," she said, "Mama is in the sky, but she still loves us." He swallowed hard, but nodded. "Yes," he whispered, "every day." It was the first time I saw him speak about Leon without breaking, and when he tucked their daughter into bed that night, he stayed longer than usual, brushing her hair, humming softly, not rushing, not distracted. That small moment told me something important. He was becoming the man she believed he could be, not because he felt he earned forgiveness, but because he wanted to honor the love she gave him. As for me, I learned something too. I learned that pain does not make us weaker. Sometimes pain makes us softer, and softness is a strength we do not always understand. I learned that people can make terrible choices, even the ones we love the most. But judgment rarely changes a person. Compassion does. Patience does. Quiet presence does. And I learned that forgiveness is not an excuse. It is a release, a way to stop carrying things that were never meant to be held forever. One evening, months later, my son and I were sitting on the balcony again, the same place where he once confessed, trembling and broken. The night was warm, the sky clear. A few distant stars shimmered like tiny candles. He looked at me, not with shame, but with a soft, tired kind of honesty. "Mom," he said, "do you think she's proud of me?" I turned to him and studied his face. He had changed. Not suddenly, not perfectly, but genuinely. The kind of change that grows from deep sorrow and quiet understanding. "Yes," I said, "I think she is." He took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs slowly, fully, like someone learning to live again. "I miss her every day," he whispered. "I know," I said softly. "That means your love was real." He nodded. His eyes glistened, not from pain this time, but from gratitude. Grief had shaped him, but it had not swallowed him. As time moved on, we built new routines, small, gentle routines. Saturday breakfasts together, evening walks with the little one, quiet talks on the balcony, light laughter returning to the house in small, careful pieces. Life didn't become perfect, it simply became possible again, and possibility is a kind of hope. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Leon. I picture her smile, calm and soft. I remember her final words, spoken with love that did not ask for anything in return. "Tell him not to carry the past alone." She didn't mean only guilt. She meant all the burdens that life brings, the fear, the regret, the loneliness, the confusion. And slowly, I realized she gave me a task far bigger than forgiveness. She asked me to hold my family together with love that was steady, patient, and quiet. So I try. Every day I try. Not perfectly, but sincerely. Because love is not loud. Love is not dramatic. Love is not always easy. Sometimes love is simply staying, sitting beside someone through the darkest parts, holding their hand without needing to be asked, listening without judgment, and believing that people can rise again no matter how far they fell. As I look back now, the story is not just about a mistake or a confession or a loss. It is about something deeper. The courage to face the truth, the strength to ask for forgiveness, the grace to offer it, the quiet power of choosing compassion when anger would be easier, and the simple, gentle act of continuing to love even when the heart is tired. That is what keeps a family going. Not perfection, not pride, just love that keeps showing up, even in silence, even in sorrow, even in the dark.